the G77 and China summit, which is currently underway now in Uganda's capital, Kampala. Our reporter Leon Ssenyange is watching that story for us. Leon, thank you so much for your time. So we understand that the summit has started. Take us through what is happening there.
Well, yes, it's very true. The summit has started. The opening session has ended a few minutes ago. Therein were very key remarks from the speakers, who included the Cuban representative, Cuba is actually the outgoing chair of the bloc. Therein there was President G77, who now assumes the chairmanship of the G77 plus China. We had the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres speak, and also the Chinese representative. Now, those were critical remarks that were coming through from the speakers from the morning session. The message therein was that the nations of the global south, the developing nations, and those emerging under this globe must pull up their socks, must really put in as much effort in trying to realize economic development, change the financial architecture that many find themselves in or struggling in. There was also the issue of climate change, but importantly, unity, solidarity, and cooperation was the message coming through from the remarks in the morning. The discussions will go on between now and later on tomorrow.
And I like that you just touched on this as well, because we do understand that Uganda assumes chairmanship of the bloc. So what does this mean for the East African country?
Well, certainly it's a very big achievement, or should be a very big achievement for Uganda. And coincidentally, it comes within the 60th anniversary of the G7 plus China bloc, of 6 decades long of this particular bloc. And there must be a lot to be done. There definitely is work on Uganda's hands at this point in time, where there's a demand to realize and have an assertion by the global south on matters international, matters economics and finance, and just as much matters of governance, because quite often many affect how the countries in the global south survive or even exist. Issues of poverty and the realization of the sustainable development goals, at least by 2030, will be key factors for Uganda to guide a pathway to realizing that. The theme here is leave no one behind. However, the general sentiment is there's quite a lot, or many of the countries that are still far behind in realizing this goal. So yes, Uganda's stewardship too in this process, or the chairmanship of the G77, will be very critical, especially now that the bloc is looking at consolidating what it possibly has done over the last 6 decades.
And Leon, I think we've seen over the years such summits also get some sort of criticism as far as implementation of what is being discussed there is concerned. Some would even say it's just lip service, it's just talk shop, but it doesn't eventually trickle down to the people on the ground where it matters the most. I mean, you just touched on some of the slogans there saying leave no one behind. Are we likely to see some action come out of such summits there?
Yes, very interesting that you actually raised that, because there's this general sentiment that the global south hasn't had as much of an influence on matters global or even international, and that is why for many the assertion for the global south and countries within the developing countries are trying to push for the realization of a statement, of a say in matters that affect themselves, but also just as much others elsewhere. And critical to this is the involvement of the United Nations. The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has asserted himself on the fact that there should be as much cooperation from countries of the global south, the developing countries, in trying to push in areas of eradication of poverty, health, which critically, and education as well, matters that critically affect the developing countries. And these can entirely be achieved by having a bigger say where it matters the most. The Summit of the Future will be coming up in September, and that of course is a UN matter, but with the G77 having quite a number, 134 members therein who are also part of the UN, it's very critical that they have a say in matters that affect them greatly. So yes, it may actually move more than just being a talk shop for many, and the realization of the fact that the countries here need to come out stronger and push for the matters that could transform the development.